What's going on, Losi NASCAR fans? We just finished a great two-day weekend event at two different tracks, racing on road with our Losi NASCARs. Now, if you take a look behind me right here, I actually finished second and took home a nice little plaque. It was a great time. Now, truth be told, I was up against someone I would never beat because he's an amazing on-road driver, but it just shows you the potential that this little car has. I want to show you some more cheap and free tricks that might help your car perform better and you perform better on the driver's stand as well. So my name is Chad. This is the Dorky N40 RC channel. We are going to make the Losi 12 scale NASCAR faster today. Now, all of you guys that know me know that, like, I'm going to teach you guys how to fish, but it's up to you to, feed yourself and all that kind of shit. Now, this is a box stock class that we're doing, but that still doesn't mean that, like, you cannot take your car apart and check it for issues and maintain it properly. So what we're going with now is just, you can play with the oils, do all that kind of stuff. No parts, no option parts, or nothing at all. One of the first things that I realized this weekend, being in these like 4-minute, 5-minute heats, trying to drive after driving other multiple classes, was the stock remote was really hurting my hands. So what I did is I took some of my grip tape, whatever you want to call it. You can get whatever kind you want. And I literally like more than doubled the size of the remote control. And this really just took the uncomfortable feeling out of it from driving the car. This remote literally was killing my hand, gripping it so tight. It's just something I do. Some of you might not suffer over this problem. I do with my Samoa M17. It comes with like bigger size grips and all that stuff you can swap out. I have the largest grip on there and a little bit of tape on there as well to make it even bigger and more comfortable. So that definitely helped me become more connected and better feeling to the car, because when you're up against the great one, Ron Mick, you got to do everything that you can do to try to stay on par, and being at one with your remote is definitely key. Now, the next thing is just going to be one of these obvious type of things. This car does not like to be driven, how could I say it, hard. It really needs to be smooth, and it comes down to this remote control and being able to operate it. So if it's not comfortable, you're not going to be able to drive the car smooth. Now, you don't have adjustments on your remote here, like spring tensions for the steering, spring tensions for the trigger, all that good stuff that you would have on a typical on-road racing car. So you got to compensate for it. What you have to do is you do have to learn to control your car and everything for yourself, modify the remote. The other thing is right in here, if you pop off your cap, you can see that there is a Phillips head screw in there. You can back that off a little bit to see if it frees up your remote any. Some of these, the quality control on these are all over the place. I have 3 different of these remotes for all of my Groms. It's all the same remote. There's no binding procedure yet because the ESC is different than what is in all the other Groms. So I don't really know how you can bind a new remote to the new one. There's no button, it's a switch, right? So basically what you have to do is just kind of work with what you've got. So we've got the stock remote here, and what I have done is, like I said, back that wheel off a little bit, and it seems to have loosened it up a little bit to make it easier to control. Maybe, maybe not, but it is what it is. The other thing that you can do, of course, with that grip tape is you can also wrap more of it around the actual steering wheel to make that a little bit more comfortable for yourself. And you can get some kind of foam tape if you want to make the trigger a little bit wider as well. You can't make the trigger slimmer, but you can make it wider because, there are situations in on-road where you're probably going to want to push brake, and you want to be able to have the lightest touch ever, because if you literally, this car brakes from like a millimeter or two of push, it goes from 0 to 100% push brake. So you get this remote tuned into your hand, feeling comfortable first, and then kind of start messing around with it. Like my Groms, I think the more that you use it, I actually think it is already a lot looser than it was at the beginning of the weekend before we put in a ton of laps on it, trigger, and the actual steering wheel. Now, one of the next things is not causing damage to your car. And I spoke about this in one of my other videos. There is a complete Losi NASCAR playlist in the description below if you want to see all the adventures that we have been on so far with this car. Power drivers, I like using them. They're my friend, whatever. But you cannot get super crazy with these power drivers. And prime example, hand drivers as well. These, the plastic molding on some of these, there's kind of some areas that are not super tough that can really affect the performance of your car. These areas right here where you screw in the top screws for this bumper, you can see that there is little indentations in there. And this is actually a replacement bumper. My other one was completely smashed. And what we're looking at is to make sure that these are equal in heights. So my one was smashed down, and what that was doing was tweaking this whole assembly down, and I had a huge gap between my body and my bumper. Now the hard thing is that you don't want to go jerking on this and everything else because your pins are recessed in there for your lower arms. So you got to be careful with that. In fact, if you look at mine already, you can see that there are actual like kind of divot out channels, and this is a brand new bumper already in the plastic that the holes kind of have some tweak in them already. So again, it's a box stock car. That's why we have to do things like we're doing right now on the bench. So on the bench, you can see I've got all kinds of parts going on with my car. If we take a look at some of the race footage here, spring assembly, and you can go in there and you can try to tweak it. I did. I loosened it up a little bit and then just kind of put it back in to see if that made any difference at all, which it really did not. If you kind of look right here, how all this goes together, there's actually a spring that goes on the end of this two-piece setup here that goes in and pushes into the actual spline of the servo. So I could definitely tell that mine has some recentering issues, and I think a lot of people have reported that. So that's just, once you rule out all the binding and all that kind of stuff, it's just kind of stuck with, we're always going to have these recentering issues because of the potentiometers that are built into the remote just are not the best quality, but it still shouldn't be as jerky as this. So that's why I kind of got my car apart, trying to find out where the binding issues is. I actually have already found one, and you'll have to tune in the next video to take a look at that. We'll go over that. By the way, in case you didn't know, this is the exploded parts diagram. And if you just go to like Horizon or wherever and click on the Losi NASCAR, click on support, you can go to the exploded view. And that is going to be really important because if you get your car apart, these cars are so little and so fiddly and stuff that if you end up taking apart and you get a bunch of screws like all laid out like I have right here, and let's say that you accidentally throw a 12 millimeter screw in where you should have an 8 millimeter screw, well, that could cause you a lot of issues. Now, so what you do is you just go on here and you see a lot of these are Arma parts because it's an Arma car, it's Arma Grom, whatever. And you can just go on to AMain and type in the part number, verify which one it is, come back to your bench, measure your screws with your calipers, and then that way you can make sure when you're putting everything back together that you are using the appropriate size screw. Cannot say that enough. Quick update, just kind of after racing the car for the weekend, besides maybe problems that I caused myself by, hogging the screws in a little tight, as I said, there is a bind somewhere in more than one spot. I found a bind in the upper arm, so I'm trying to work on that right now, and we'll talk about that again in another upcoming video. The diffs are wearing in pretty good. I doubt there's any grease or anything left in them. I don't know. I don't see, you know, it's a split case. I don't see anything leaking out, but just taking out the front diff here, it definitely just feels like we just got a bunch of gears spinning around there. But I'm just going to roll with it and not worry about it because the car had plenty of drive and speed. I just lost all of my drive and speed where I needed it. And I don't think it is a fluid problem right now because I think Ron kind of ruled that out already because this car was still super fast. And everybody that drove my car said it was very difficult and drove like a turd. So that is where we're at, probably because of those issues, which, like I said, we will talk about in the next video. So make sure that you subscribe and all of that kind of good stuff. But in the end, make sure that you are working with a good remote to start so you can drive the car very smooth. Make sure you don't have no apparent binding issues. If you're racing competitively on carpet, balance your tires, all that good kind of stuff, things that we've already talked about in all of the videos previously. So I appreciate each and every one of you coming back. We'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.